All right, let's get into it. We're about to tackle one of the biggest, oldest, and most difficult questions humanity has ever asked itself. And what's wild is that the Old Testament itself is the scene of a huge fight over the answer. You know the one. It's the question that hits you right in the gut when you see something terrible happen, when life just feels so unfair. We've all asked it, and it turns out, so did the people writing the Bible thousands of years ago. Now, here's the thing you might not expect. The Bible doesn't just hand you a single neat answer. Not at all. Instead, it's more like a record of a passionate, centuries-long argument, a real struggle to figure out who God is in a world that's so often filled with pain. So here's how we're going to walk through that great debate. First, we'll look at what I'm calling the divine rulebook. Then we'll see what happens when life isn't fair. From there, we'll witness Job's audacious protest, listen to the skeptic's wisdom, and finally try to understand what it means to have faith in the chaos. Okay, first up, let's look at the starting point. For a really long time, the main idea was that the universe ran on a very simple, almost transactional set of rules. People call this the theology of retribution. And honestly, the logic is super straightforward. Obey God, and good things happen. You get blessings, good health, you'll do well in life. But if you disobey, well, you can expect punishment, sickness, and a whole lot of suffering. Thinkers like Moses and King David pretty much saw the world this way. If you got sick, it was probably a direct result of something you did wrong. It's a very neat and tidy system of cosmic justice, right? But life isn't neat and tidy, is it? And it wasn't long before some of the biblical writers themselves started pointing out some major cracks in this whole system. I mean, they just looked around at the world, and they saw a really troubling picture. Sometimes really good, decent people suffered horribly. And at the same time, you had these corrupt, awful people who were just living their best lives. This observation, which you see laid out so painfully in places like Psalm 73, created a massive theological crisis. If the rulebook doesn't actually work, then what does that say about the one who supposedly wrote the rules? And you can feel the pain in their words. This wasn't just some intellectual puzzle for them. The author of Psalm 73 says that trying to square that simple formula with the messy world he saw around him, it was oppressive. It was like this heavy, crushing weight on his soul. That spiritual pain is the fuse that lights one of the most explosive stories in the entire Bible. This is where Job comes in. He's the poster child for undeserved suffering, a perfectly good man whose life is utterly destroyed for what seems like no reason at all. Now, forget any picture you have of Job as a patient, quiet victim. That's not him. His friends show up and they try to use the old rulebook on him, saying, "Dude, you must have done something wrong." But Job is having none of it. He knows he's innocent, and he takes his case straight to the top. He yells, he complains, he puts God on trial. He absolutely refuses to accept an easy answer that denies his own reality. And if you think this is just some ancient story, get this. Job's situation is shockingly modern. It's almost a perfect parallel to Franz Kafka's famous novel, The Trial. Both Job and the character Yosef K. are accused by a power they can't see or understand. They're both trapped in a system that feels totally random and unfair. And they both spend all their energy just trying to get an answer, a reason for what's happening to them. It's timeless. But the debate doesn't end with Job's righteous anger. Another voice joins the argument, and this one might be the most radical of them all. This is the voice of the skeptic, the author of the book of Ecclesiastes. This writer looks at the whole chaotic mess of the world and essentially says, hey, maybe you're all asking the wrong question. They argue that life is random, it's short, and you absolutely cannot count on some grand cosmic justice to make things right. So instead of driving yourself crazy trying to figure out the universe, the wisest thing you can possibly do is focus on what's right here, right now. And the advice that comes from this is just so wonderfully practical. It's like, stop trying to solve the riddle of the cosmos. Instead, go find real meaning in the small, simple things. Enjoy a good meal, share a bottle of wine, cherish the person you love. It's this incredible shift from demanding justice from heaven to creating your own joy on earth. So you've got the old rulebook, the angry protester, and the down-to-earth skeptic. How on earth does the Bible resolve this huge debate? Well, the answer comes in the absolutely stunning conclusion to Job's story. After all the back and forth, God finally shows up. And just when you think Job is about to get blasted for his audacity, God does the complete opposite. He turns to Job's friends, the ones defending the old simple rules, and says, "You have not spoken the truth about me as my servant Job has." It's a bombshell. In a shocking twist, God says the protester, the questioner, the one who screamed his bitter truth, was more right than the people who offered easy, pious answers. So let's just pull this all together. The debate starts with that simple rulebook from Moses and Solomon: follow the rules and you'll be fine. Then Job comes along and smashes that idea, arguing that when you suffer unjustly, the right thing to do is protest and demand answers. And then Ecclesiastes steps back even further and says, look, in a random world, maybe the wisest thing isn't to demand answers from the cosmos, but to create your own joy right here. And that really brings us to the final, most important question. This whole epic debate in the Old Testament seems to point to a completely different idea of what faith is. What if true faith isn't about having all the answers or clinging to a tidy rulebook? What if, instead, it's about having the courage to live in the mess, the courage to protest like Job, to question everything and to find simple joy like Ecclesiastes, all while living in a world we might never, ever fully understand?